Welcome to another episode of Mortgage Matters, every Wednesday with Team Adwar. Here's your host, Todd Adwar. All right, good morning. Happy Wednesday, and welcome back to Mortgage Matters with Team Adwar and Todd, our host. How are we doing this week, Todd?
We're doing really well, Tim. We had a fabulous event last night. I'll speak about it in a minute. But we're doing absolutely terrific. So I wanted to start the show out like I always do with the Mortgage Matters update, and we had a good week for rates this past week. Saw a significant drop, 6.84 now for a 30-year fixed conventional, and that's pretty nice. Back in the sixes, 6.30. For a 30-year fixed FHA, 6.28 for a 15-year fixed. And jumbos are back down to just over 7%. And this was like maybe a 25, 26, 27, 28 basis points less than the week before. And I see it continuing to drift lower. Now, it doesn't go down like a rock, Tim. It goes a little down, then a little up and a little down. So I would say to the customers out there, don't try and time the market. So I've had a lot of conversations with a bunch of trader friends of mine, and they're now telling me 100% that they're going to cut rates in September. And they're probably going to cut rates from the 5.35 to 5.5 to 5 to 5.25. And they're really certain that that's the rate cut. It's going to be 0.25% cut. It's going to come in September. So what does that mean? Right now, when that happens in September, we're not going to see additional drop in rates. So it's already getting baked in there, so to speak. So they were assuming it. If for any reason it doesn't happen, we could see rates shoot up back into the mid sevens. So be careful. Great time to buy. Get a nice drop. Certainly if you got a mortgage rate in the high sevens or in the low eights a year or two ago, give us a call. It's time to refinance out of that, and we'll see where they go. Don't try to time the market. It's not something that works. So we got the official date. You'll be very interested for NAR. And the official date is August 17th that it goes into effect. And what does that mean for buyers and sellers out there? So after August 17th, it's quite likely that the buyers will have to pay a commission. In fact, Tim, as a realtor, if you're showing people homes now, you're having them sign something.
Well, that was always the strongest. That was always the strongest recommendation, to get someone to register with you and commit to working with you to find a place, and saying, obviously I'm representing you, but I get paid through the seller's proceeds. So that's what the document that I had always had and always, explained to people. Some people were like, oh, we don't need to sign up. I understand, blah, 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 and then that's always like a bone of contention when you're meeting someone for the first time, if they're not, the relative or close friend that chooses you anyway. But that's always been the way that you're supposed to get that document signed. But now what they're saying is that on the other side, the sellers do not have to offer a buyer's commission and will not be publishing it. If they are, it's like not going to be published, and therefore you have to dig that out of the deal and see where that comes from. So when you're meeting someone new, someone not referred to you, that understands that's how it comes out of the proceeds of the sale, that you're going to have to collect from them.
Well, let's be more specific, Tim. If I come into your office and we don't know each other, and I won't sign that, you're not taking me out, because you may show me 20 houses and then not get paid for it.
Yeah.
So I understand there's a lot of different ways it could be added into the purchase price, which it was for a million years anyway. But I have to sign that piece of paper, and buyers should be aware of that's the way it works. So
it goes back to, if I could add just a quick version of this, is that it's very important to respect the business that we're in that we're not just, unlocking doors for people and running around. I've had people, and especially, when realtors were getting abused. I think it was Faber Carter who got murdered, and it was crazy, and everybody got very nervous about that. And then during COVID, when you can only let one person in, you had to qualify these people, sit down with them, make sure they knew what they were getting into. If they were qualified to come into the house, you try and get them pre-qualified with a mortgage. But same respect, you now have to explain that if I'm not getting paid from the seller, we have to cut something out through you, Mr. Buyer, because that's the way, I make a living. So
right. No, absolutely.
And respecting the business is really important. And this goes hand in hand with that. So most experienced realtors are not afraid of this. Everybody, treats it like, oh, they're going to kill the industry, but it's not really the way.
No, and it becomes the norm. When I walk in to buy a pizza, I don't expect to walk out for free. I'm walking out with a home here. I'm walking out with $1 million home. Yeah. I understand. I got to pay something. Somebody's got to make something. Okay. So something interesting that Biden is said to be proposing, which is a national rent cap of 5%. And this could lower the value of homes. And let me explain why.
Yeah.
So if I put a cap, let's say you own a investment property and you have a 20-year tenant, and the 20-year tenant is paying $1,000 a month, but they should have been paying $2,000 a month, but you like the tenant, they've been paying you on time, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden they move out. Tim, now you can only charge the next tenant $1,050 instead of $2,000. So if I'm going to buy your house, and I can only charge $1,050, well, that's not as viable for me.
Right.
So that means I'm going to pay you less because the value of what I could charge for rent it's going to take me 20 years to catch up. So maybe a good thing for renters, not a good thing for homeowners. If that goes into effect, I would think they could put that in on apartment buildings. And maybe that might help renters, just rental buildings. But if you put that in for 1, 2, 3, 4 family homes that you're renting, you're killing that market.
Yeah.
I know it sounds great, but you're killing that market.
I know that some of those exist in New York where there's rental caps for renters. But if you're saying it's locked in for the next renter or whatever.
No matter what, it wouldn't be everything would be rent.
Everything is rent control.
Rent control.
And that
not the American way. Not the American way.
That's not going to work.
So, and finally, nearly a third of U.S. homeowners are cutting the prices on housing as the supplies increase. Tim, obviously, they're not getting the numbers, but there are two things to consider. One is where in the country are you? So Florida, they're cutting. New York, they're not. California's starting to rise again. So they're not cutting. And then look, if I made $150,000 in profit from 2020 to 2024 on my home, but now I got to lower it $15,000, $20,000 to sell it, and I only made $130,000. Did I really lose any money?
Right.
I don't know. Or maybe the realtor says, well, ask $500,000 when the last house sold for $475 and I get $470 or $472. I probably should have listed it for that amount anyway. So it's just sort of a reset of the values out there. I don't see it as being a major contributor. In some states, we are seeing or some cities, some areas, we are seeing, prices fall a little bit more significantly, but most of the country's pretty solid. Okay, we have a great guest today.
I think I have one for you. Is this?
Yeah, no, that was it.
That was part of it.
Yeah. All right. So we have a great guest today.
Yes.
A long time friend of mine, called Giuffrida from Lumica Capital. We've done a bunch of deals together, and the women call him, Carl Handsome, and we're thrilled to have him. And it's going to be a real treat to talk about the commercial market today. How are you, Carl?
Good, Todd. Thanks for having me. Hey, Tim, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Why don't you tell everybody, Carl, how long you've been in the business?
I've been I'm managing director of Lumica Capital for several years, but I've been in the commercial real estate finance business for about 20 years now.
Did you stumble on that, or you went to school for it? How do you wind up in the commercial end of real estate finance?
I started out in residential. I started out in your world,
Okay.
and it was a great space to be in. I just, you asked me if it stumbled upon it. Actually, I kind of did. I was doing residential. I had a satellite office for a broker. I was doing a lot of reverse mortgages, that sort of thing. It was that time of the year, that time of the season. And I was introduced to a private bridge lender.
Okay.
And so I developed a relationship with the private bridge lender, and he told me what he does. He invests, on bridge loans on investment properties.
And the numbers are exciting when you're working with 100,000s, and then now you start working with millions. Those numbers are exciting.
Well, that's kind of what maybe one of the reasons why I crossed the aisle. I enjoyed dealing. One is you're doing the same amount of work, bigger ticket items. So yeah, it is more rewarding. But you're also working with, business owners, investors, and it's a different type of clientele, which I seem to, adhere more to. So and resonate more with.
Are you saying that rich people like you, Carl? Is that what you're telling us?
Not necessarily rich, but just business minded, entrepreneurial minded people. So I enjoy working with that type of personality, and so.
So give us your views on the current commercial real estate market.
It's overall it's very active. It's got growth in a couple of areas, downturns in other areas as normal. Office demand is still trending down. It's got a slight uptick recently in the occupancy, but nothing significant. I think it was still around like 50% occupancy at best. So office space doesn't look good right now. It hasn't looked good, and I don't really seeing it getting any better. But the multifamily sector really continues to see growth. There's a lot of demand for the multifamily. A lot of investors are jumping into that space and getting into that game,
right?
Due to the default rates that's been coming up recently and continues to come in. It's creating a lot of opportunity in that multifamily to acquire these properties. So that's really going strong. The retail and industrial markets, continue to run tight, but it's got consistency. And the hotel sector, it's actually really strong. Hotel occupancy, I believe, unofficially, around 65-70%, which is close to pre-pandemic numbers. So the hotel industry and the multifamily are the two leads.
So the commercial market, Tim and I are interested in buying some properties now. So commercial properties, tell us where it's headed. Where will the market be in 5 years?
I think we're going to still see a lot of opportunity in the next several years in the multifamily space. So if you and Tim wanted to get into that, I would recommend getting into like a value add acquisition where you could get a price, get a property at a discount in lieu of maybe some property conditions or financial poor conditions, and you add some value to it. You add equity by doing some renovations and improve the rental income. So you're building up your equity, which builds up your revenue, which builds up your return. So it's a way to get an early, a low number entry with a big upside.
Hey, I don't know if you heard or saw what Biden's proposing, which is a 5% cap on renters per year for rent. What would that do to the multifamily market?
Well, I think. Listen, I mean, if it comes to play, I really don't necessarily take any of this campaign stuff too seriously. It's just like anything else. There's a lot of proposals of good change, but after November, things start to get lost in the mix.
Is there anything with the election that you might look at and say, wow, if this side wins, this could happen. If that side wins, that could happen. We're hearing a lot of pundits talk about what could happen if either side wins.
I think
commercials.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think, listen, I mean, in any condition, and that's what makes, the real estate space exciting, the investment world exciting, is learning how to pivot in any condition. So whether it's either party that, is in the administration next year, I really don't think it's going to weigh heavily, make too much of a significant change. Like I said, investors are good at pivoting. And so if there's any kind of policy that is thrown at it, there's always a way to, to get around, making it still a profitable project.
So Tim and I are going to be new at this game, and we want to get all of our documents in order. What should we start looking to get so that we could start to think about securing commercial real estate financing? What type of paperwork do you collect?
Well, we look at the property and the borrower when we originate a loan. So, we need to see, as far as the property, we need to see the rent schedule to see what kind of rental income is coming in, what kind of expenses are there, so we could see what the net, revenue is. I like to see a profit and loss statement, balance sheet. That's all on the property. And as far as, the borrower, we need to see their, their credit conditions. So we need to see a credit report, just like most financing acquisitions. And we'd want to see a personal financial statement as well as tax returns.
So if I have a property,
having said that, Todd, though, there are programs that, that don't require a full doc. That's for a full doc underwriting.
Right.
And that's where obviously you're going to get the best rate and term. But if you're in a situation where maybe, self-employed, whatever it may be, that you don't have the documentation to show, there might be delay in tax returns or whatever it may be, there are programs available that don't require, a low doc program. But again, there's more costs associated with those programs.
Now, if you have an entrepreneur who maybe they are renting a commercial space, and now they want to buy a building to move their whatever it is, their commercial unit in, what type of special government financing is there out there for those types of folks? So let's just say I own a gas station. I want to buy another gas station, but I don't own the real estate on the first gas station. I want to buy the real estate. So I'm going to be my own landlord, or maybe it's a laundromat or something like that. What can I get? What areas am I thinking? Do I have to come up with millions of dollars in cash to buy this?
No, absolutely not. So to answer your question, and that's one of the points and that makes this program attractive, it's the small business, the SBA, Small Business Administration. They have a couple of programs, 7A, 504, that they back the loan program for the business owner. So if you had a business that you wanted to move into your own brick and mortar space, the SBA has the program to allow you to do that, where they only require maybe 10% at a down payment, sometimes 15 down payment, right? So it's a low out of cost. They're obviously their incentive and their purpose is to work in favor of the businesses and the business owners for their growth and expansion. So they allow the business owners to acquire a property with only very little down, 10 to 15%, and it's very attractive rates. And again, it's backed by, it's a government-backed program, so it's very mitigates the risk from the bank and lending perspectives.
So again, and I'm just making this up, Tim and I are not really purchasing anything this week, but how would we assess the value of anything we're interested in? What's the first thing we should look at as newbies, when trying to figure out, okay, this is going to be profitable for us? How does that work? Give the newbies some sort of advice on how to dip their toe in the water.
Just got to put the pencil to the paper. It just comes down to the numbers. Just like anything else in real estate, you don't want to get emotional. You don't want to, have too many variables come into play. The numbers have to work. You want to have a built-in contingency in there as well. So if you wanted to purchase, whatever, you wanted to purchase a commercial property, an investment property, say a 4-unit, something to that effect. You just got to check out. You got to do your homework. You can't get emotional. you gotta look at all the variables, but don't overthink the unimportant ones. So, the main points is what the gross revenue is, what the outlay is, what your investment is, and then what the net revenue is going to be. And so you need to really do your homework to see, what the expenses of that property truly are. You need to speak to the seller. You maybe, you speak to some of the tenants. You got to talk to the community, know what you're getting into.
Right.
So just like anything else, you just got to be prepared and do your homework. But, that shouldn't shy. People get shied away from commercial real estate, but it's really nothing. It could really be simplified. And that's what I'm trying to really convey here. It's just to keep it simple and just make sure the numbers work.
So you mentioned before we were talking about the office market, and I'm sitting in an office with room for 40, 50 people. And on the average day, there's 5 to 10 that show up. And when my lease comes due next November, I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll just reduce the office space to 20. Do you see people coming back to the office space at all in the upcoming years, or is this now a new age and the old age is now dead? The horse and carriage is dead. Is office space dead forever, or?
I think so. I mean, proof is in the pudding. I mean, like you just said, you're sitting in fairly empty office, and it's not that you don't have, it's not that you don't have a huge workforce. It's just that they're not in the office. So I don't know what incentives on either the business owner on the corporate side or for the employee. I don't know what incentives are out there or that will come into play to kind of change, what you're seeing out there, whether get them back into the office. So to answer your question, I don't see that changing. The big question is, what do you do with all this office space? So I think, the next big wave is going to be, an application of converting this office space into something that's, applicable to what's going on in this.
We're seeing that they have something called the Huntington Quadrangle on Long Island. And it was 4 buildings, huge buildings, maybe 1 million plus square feet. I'm sure it is. And they have applied to the town to make themselves their own sort of little village to do apartments, condo, whatever it is. And they have just started applying. So they're going to take all of that commercial space off the market. I guess if enough commercial space, office space comes off the market, then there'll be some call for, office space buildings. The guy next to him will now have, be able to rent a little bit easier.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's a very optimistic way. That's the glass.
It may take 15, 20 years, but
the glass, it'll take some time, but that's the glass is half full. So if the occupancy rate is at 50%, then and to your point, if you do some conversions to catch up to that 50% mark, then it will balance out. Then you will have both markets that are more stabilized.
I want to toss this one in. Was the guy from I forget his name, but he started WeWork and that went all crazy and then went belly up. But he was looking at sharing office space, setting that up. Now we have so much vacancy, those places can't really compete with it. But that kind of concept makes sense. Was he way ahead of his time, or he didn't see this coming, where now there's so much office space that people can make deals on it at that time? I mean, do you see a WeWork kind of situation coming in to play a little better?
I'm not sure. I mean, it's with technology, it's so easy to just be mobile, to work from home, or to be mobile. You could work from your car and have access and the ability of full functional office. So like I said before, I think it would require. Listen, there's some businesses, that 50% occupancy. There's still businesses that require that. In my opinion, that still require to have the employees in-house and under one roof. But aside from that, I'm not sure people are gonna get up and commute to an individual workspace or an office building. I don't see it.
Right.
Do you have any interesting deals that you've been working on over the last few months? I know you were telling me about a few.
Yeah, well, but we get a lot of loan requests from, full spectrum. So, we deal with a lot of different various clientele, different personalities. So there's always, every deal is interesting in its own way, and we get a lot of interesting situations. But, really, Todd, what's interesting to me is when it's rewarding for me personally to be able to help a client from A to Z, and I'll explain what I mean in a second. But that's what I find interesting, is when I could do something that's rewarding for me personally. That's what interests me. So I'll give you an example. I recently had a couple, a young couple. They own a restaurant bar, and they had their finances were all out of whack. Personally, their business owed a lot of debt because they found themselves underwater. So they were taking some bad money, and so they were a little bit in trouble on both personal and business. They had a couple of young kids. So what they needed to do is they needed to relieve the debt of the business so the business could stabilize, cash flow a little better, which would then help their personal cash flow situation better. So, and then they wanted to fix up the restaurant in order to obviously, increase the menu prices, to be able to increase their revenue, their gross revenue, and so forth. And in addition to that, they wanted to make an addition to the restaurant as a brewery. So I was able to, I brought in a bridge loan. It wasn't us as a direct lender. We used a correspondent lender for this situation, but we brought in a bridge loan to give them a bridge loan to take care of the debt on the business. I gave them a little bit of working capital, and it also gave them the capital that they needed to build out the brewery. And in addition to that, that was able to relieve them to start cleaning up their credit and get their ducks in a row for some better financing. Once the brewery was completed and it was all said and done, the restaurant was renovated. I refinanced them to a long-term conventional.
So you held their hands for a long time.
Exactly. So, I mean, I'm not a financial advisor, so there's my disclaimer. But sometimes, and I take pride in being able to do stuff like that. So I took a couple that was business owners, good people, good business, just found themselves in a financial situation. And it led to the point where they now had a stabilized business, their finances were in order. And, they were, financially more free, and that gave them the ability to.
So you changed their life. We see that on the residential end too. So yeah, I get that.
Right. So that was a long answer to your question of what's interesting deal. Those are the deals that are really interesting to me.
But that was a business loan, or did they own the property?
They own the property. No, that was an asset-based loan.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, Carl, thank you very much. Do we have any questions out there? Or
yeah, actually, there is one just popped up. Martha says, "Are there any parts of the country where the market is particularly stronger?"
Well, the strong gauge from that is where we're seeing most of our loan requests coming from, and we're New York based, obviously. So we do see, a good amount of New York based, Northeast type loan requests. But Florida is very strong. Texas is very strong. Not so much. I'm not seeing anything much in the southern states. I mean, I say not so much. I'm saying comparable to the stronger states. But I would say that, Florida and Texas are the two stronger ones right now.
Great.
Well, but you would say Carl, most of your business is done in the New York area?
I'm sorry?
Most of your business done in the New York area. This tri-state area around here? Where we are?
Yeah, but we do a lot of business nationwide.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Great. Carl, thank you so much for joining us today. It was fun.
Thank you, guys.
And, very educational. And we'll be sending you some deals to help our clients. So
I look forward to
working with you.
Likewise. Thanks, guys.
Well, thanks for coming.
Have a great day. Bye, everybody.